The hall was still buzzing with applause, but at that moment, the microphone went dead. And it wasn't a random technical glitch. It was me. Standing in the shadows at the back of the room, with a carelessly pinned name tag and my coat still on, I had switched it off. One tap in the event app, using my admin privileges, and I cut his speech short. 10 minutes. It only took him 10 minutes to start describing my dissertation, my model, my data training method, as if he had personally invented them over his morning coffee. He hadn't noticed me arrive. But the title of his presentation, Revolutionary Predictive Language with Emotion-Recognizing Artificial Intelligence, was mine. Every word, every phrase. I had proof. Last night, burning the midnight oil in the hotel bathroom, with my laptop balanced precariously on the edge and my phone acting as a Wi-Fi hotspot, I submitted a preliminary patent application. 2:41 a.m. Eastern Time. Timestamp, digital signature, registration, all in my name. And now I was watching my boss's boss, the very one who once told me I lacked leadership charisma, strut across the stage in his designer suit, like a tech prophet, presenting my stolen work to a room full of venture capitalists and government officials. He had no idea what was coming. While he was sound asleep in his luxurious $600 a night room, I sent an explosive technical report straight into the snake pit, the conference board, the ethics committee, and, most gratifyingly, a meticulous reporter from Wired, who was sniffing around like a bloodhound for stories of corporate plagiarism in the murky labs of artificial intelligence. But that wasn't the climax. Richard Harding, the smug thief, didn't realize that the version I sent wasn't just a patent. It was a bomb, set to detonate his dirty dealings, exposing all his thefts. And not just from me. He stole from someone who couldn't fight back anymore. 6 months ago, I was wiping blood off a cursed USB drive. And that's not a figure of speech. It fell out of Owen Sterling's pocket as the paramedics were turning over his mangled body. A car crash on the cursed 101. The turnoff at Willow Creek Road. A fatal screech of metal. Multiple passengers. Only one survivor, and she wasn't lucky enough to escape unscathed. A broken collarbone, a dislocated ankle, and a memory that stuttered like a skipping record when she tried to reconstruct the events of that fateful hour before the collision. Me. We were colleagues. More than that, we were co-conspirators, conspirators in this hostile space. Owen and I weren't just trying to create another chatbot. We were striving to breathe empathy into machine learning, to create a genuine, adaptive emotional response, something that could defuse crises, understand subtle nuances, respond to suicidal thoughts not with memorized phrases, but with heartfelt, insightful language. A tool to save people. And we were close, incredibly close, closer than anyone could imagine. Until he was gone. And then, 3 days later, Vice President Richard Harding appears, his face contorted with feigned concern, asking if Owen had shared any confidential research with me that needed to be protected. I remained silent, not because I was plotting anything, but because I was afraid my face would betray me, revealing the storm raging behind my eyes. Richard had no idea that Owen had given me everything. That USB drive, which I had managed to slip into my pocket unnoticed, wasn't just a backup of files. It was a complete, meticulously detailed document, written by us in collaboration, ready for publication, with detailed correspondence between Owen and a member of the ethics department. Inside was the very patent version Richard had been hunting for since last fall. Irrefutable proof of the model's functionality. And the sole architect listed was me. That's where the real nightmare began. I never submitted that version. Not then. I kept it, nursing my wounds like a broken rib. And watched as Richard methodically commandeered team meetings, promoted his presentations, pushed his vision. Any resistance on my part was exhausting. Comments in front of stakeholders were punished with a warning for inappropriate tone. And then, reorganization. My role was reduced to supporting research and development. A demotion without severance. It wasn't just theft. It was annihilation. But the USB held one more surprise. Something Richard never discovered. An entire email chain, dating back weeks before the accident. Owen had started documenting anomalies, strange request routings, changing executable flags, duplicate requests leading to Harding's credentials. He was trying to warn me, but I didn't listen. And there it was, in my hands, not just a dissertation defense, but the last weapon bequeathed to me by a dead man. A patent? This wasn't just revenge, it was a detonator, and I'd just lit the fuse. The first sign that my plan was working came 17 minutes after I cut off his microphone. A low, guttural hum rippled through the room, like a swarm of bees sensing a storm. Richard froze, as if struck by lightning, mid-slide. His gaze darted around the room, seeking help from the tech booth. He tried to regain control, forcing a saccharine smile. He started talking about minor technical difficulties, promising to continue with the main conclusions. Anything to avoid explaining why the senior vice president's voice had suddenly disappeared from the ridiculously expensive sound system. And then, as if on cue, it began. A few rows ahead of me, a woman in a severe gray suit leaned over to her colleague and whispered, "Too quiet. Did you hear the patent was just registered? Different author, same title." The colleague blinked in surprise, "Are you sure?" The woman nodded, "Notification just came through. Name's not Harding." I saw those words hit him like a sniper's bullet. His chest hitched involuntarily, but his eyes reflected pure terror. There he stood, a house of cards built on other people's money and lies, and I watched his world crumble. In a panic, his gaze swept the crowd, searching for the one who had pulled the trigger. He still didn't see me. Not yet. But his polished assistant, Tiffany, already slick with fear, was frantically typing messages on her phone. Like a rat, she darted towards the side door, no doubt to try and patch the holes. Useless. By this point, everything had already been sent. Proof of his theft was in my hands, the patent application, drafts with my notes, screenshots from our Slack channel where I detailed the very feature he was now so brazenly presenting as his own. All dated, all verified. And that wasn't all. I had the voicemail. The one Owen had left me 3 days before he died. His voice trembled, speaking hurriedly, as if someone was standing behind him. "Richard's trying to bury everything. He knows it's yours. If anything happens to me, don't let him publish it. Patent it yourself. I gave it to you first. All the evidence is on the drive." I hadn't dared to listen to it until last night. I just couldn't. But when I heard his voice again, something broke inside me, something I thought I had buried under mountains of work, liters of caffeine, and barely suppressed hatred. But that message turned everything upside down. This wasn't just stealing ideas, it was desecration. He wasn't just stealing from me, he was robbing the glory from someone who could no longer defend himself. And that's when I snapped. I'd never recorded voice messages before, but now I created one and scheduled it to be sent. In 23 minutes, every mailbox at this conference, including his own, would receive an email with the subject line, "This is the voice you tried to silence." And suddenly, the lights in the room flickered. For a split second, everything was plunged into darkness. The backup power kicked in immediately. The screen behind Harding started to glitch, and I couldn't help but smile, knowing which slide was coming next. Not his. Mine. He tried to keep up appearances, pretending everything was under control. "Looks like we're having a slight technical hiccup," he chuckled, scanning the room for sympathy he didn't deserve. "Apologies for the inconvenience. We'll return to the slide on core architecture in just a moment." But the screen didn't return to his slide. My slide appeared there. The full title of my work, clear and concise, centered on the screen. I heard a stifled gasp escape through clenched teeth. The silence that followed was palpable, cutting, as if the air had been sliced with a blade, leaving a bleeding wound. He froze, like a statue. No more prepared remarks, just the sound of a man desperately trying to maintain control of the situation, of the room that no longer belonged to him. And the audience was no longer in the dark. Because in the 10th row, Casey Stone, a journalist from Wired, to whom I had leaked the information, stood up. She hit play on her phone and, looking directly at him, spoke loud enough for everyone to hear. "Mr. Harding, could you explain why this presentation appears to be written by someone else who filed a patent for the same technology less than 24 hours ago?" I swear I saw his jaw twitch convulsively. Camera lenses were pointed at him, not at his team, not at the slides, but at him. He opened his mouth, but not a single word came out. Emotionally adaptive language processing in neural contextual networks. Lead architect Dr. Audrey Blake. No company branding. The speakers in the room crackled to life with a quiet click and a soft chime, like the prelude to a storm. Owen Sterling's voice echoed through the hall. "This is Owen Sterling speaking. If you're hearing this, something has gone wrong." His voice was panicked, like a cornered animal. He spoke as if every second counted. "I'm leaving this for Audrey. Richard Harding is intercepting my reports. Falsifying authorship. I found traces in our repository. If I disappear, if this is silenced, know that it's his doing. He created this. He deserves the credit. Not me, not him." A dead silence fell. No one stirred. Even the usually nimble technicians froze, their jaws dropped, their fingers seemingly forgetting the existence of buttons. And Richard? He slowly turned, as if hoping to incinerate the ghost of his mistake with a glance, to make it disappear. At that moment, he saw me. Without a coat, my badge clearly visible, I stood next to the conference organizer, who was already reading my email with the attached submission records and metadata. My face was unreadable, but inside, fury raged. Our eyes met, and I slightly inclined my head, not arrogantly, not maliciously, but with the confidence of someone who knows the truth. He lunged towards me, but only managed 3 steps. The chairman of the ethics committee appeared in his path, like a wall, blocking the way with his tablet and 4 words that finally shattered his armor. "Mr. Harding, please come with me." Explosion. Not a roar, not chaos, but rather a guttural hum, born from hundreds of minds suddenly gaining clarity. Like dominoes realizing they were lined up to fall on another. And at the epicenter of this collapse, him, alone, suffocating in the silence he himself created. But I wasn't finished yet. I hadn't even touched the second file on the drive. The one that bore the ominous label insurance. I opened it on the plane, on the way home. My hand hovered over the file, my stomach twisted into a tight knot of foreboding and fear. Insurance, it could be anything. Knowing Owen, there was no doubt it would be something extremely specific. He didn't recognize vagueness. His forte was surgical precision, time to the second. And when the file opened, I saw not just a pile of data. It was a punch to the gut, a shot to the heart. A torrent of encrypted emails, weighty attachments, a mountain of PDF documents, ominously titled, "Property Conflicts Regarding Grant Labs, 2021 to 2023, crashed directly into my inbox. My God. Richard wasn't just stealing my work, he was running a whole criminal scheme, laundering projects. Innovative developments of the kernel, which had been shelved due to futility or prematurity, he quietly resurrected under his own name, presenting them at private presentations. And he received funding, venture capital investments. In one of the folders, I stumbled upon a crossed-out and signed contract, riddled with his notes. He was offering a licensing agreement for that very model of emotional processing, 2 months before my version was ready for demonstration. And what was most disgusting, he used Owen's original technical report as proof of concept. Now it was clear why he was so desperately trying to erase Owen's name from all documents. That's why he came to me, playing the role of a caring mentor. He wasn't just trying to get around us, he was cynically using us as stepping stones to his peak. He had the map in his hands, and we were knocked out. But the final file, the mere thought of it made my throat constrict. Video. A blurred shot from a security camera, a lobby, the quality was terrible, but the faces were distinguishable. The date, 5 days before Owen's accident. Richard was standing in the underground garage, and next to him was someone I didn't recognize at first. bald, stocky, dressed like a janitor, but with a brand new sports bag in his hands. They shook hands. The man handed him an envelope. Richard looked inside, counted the money, nodded, and left. Too weak for the police, not enough to prove his involvement in the accident. But for everything else, more than enough. Enough to bury any legal review. Enough to disrupt all upcoming deals. Enough to brand his name with black-hot iron in all databases for the next 10 years. But I wasn't in a hurry. Not yet. I wanted him to know that I had this information. To make him feel this fear. To make him realize, I didn't just get my job back. I pulled the strings, launching my plan for revenge. No emails, an old-fashioned courier envelope, with my personal monogram, was sent to him. Inside, carefully selected evidence, a still from the compromising video, a copy of the page from the licensing agreement, and a note written by Owen, which I had carefully kept for a year. "They never expect the blow when you're smiling," I whispered, sending the envelope on its way. The call came 2 hours later. Not from Richard, from his lawyer. "Richard has resigned," the lawyer said dryly. "For personal reasons." Immediately. No official statements, farewell speeches, just silence. But the real storm broke out later. The email from the ethics committee woman, the one who'd initiated the investigation against Richard, contained only one line: "You should know, he wasn't alone." A chill ran down my spine. The ghost I thought I'd vanquished had reared its ugly head again. Sleep eluded me that night. Not from guilt, no. I'd long since moved past that. When someone tries to steal your life, erase your name and write theirs over it, you don't feel guilty about setting their reputation on fire. My mind was consumed by the last sentence of the email, haunting me. He wasn't alone. The thought drilled into my brain, forcing me to replay snippets of conferences, seemingly pointless meetings, fleeting details that had seemed insignificant at the time. I remembered Miles, the head of the data team, accidentally forgetting to include me on release update emails. I remembered Tiffany, his assistant, having a secret Slack channel with our superiors, even though I was the lead developer on that goddamn platform. I dove into the archives like a pearl diver, retrieving every internal project document I could still access. I correlated folder names, cross-referenced commit logs. Compared them to the version history Owen had hidden on the flash drive. And there it was. A commit tag from 6 months ago. Not mine, and not Owen's. Registered to a username that meant nothing to me, Head of Operations Porter Infra, Olivia Porter. Her image flashed in my mind. Impeccable suits, polished politeness, a shadow in the background during important presentations. She had never addressed me directly, never spoken about my project. Her face was as impenetrable as a mask, but now, in light of these new discoveries, I felt a cold shiver crawl down my spine. I'd always looked right through Harding, considering her just a ghost in a glass office, busy writing stock options. But now I realized that she was the one who sent the fix that rerouted our logging system. The very rerouting that allowed Richard to clone my neural context dataset and run it through a test environment I never authorized. She was the surgical glove on his hand during the theft, the hidden hand that made sure I didn't see any blood until it had dried. And the deeper I dug, the more I found. A shared Dropbox folder crammed with archived slideshows. A line item for billing code disguised as a consulting research brief, external partners. A 7-page introductory brief detailing my algorithm, watermarked with a third-party venture firm. They were selling it together. And the name of that firm, Caldwell Bridge Capital, it crashed down on me like a cobblestone through glass, because Caldwell Bridge was run by Owen's uncle. I'd only met him twice. I still remembered the icy look he gave me, shaking my hand at Owen's funeral. I'd chalked it up to grief back then. How wrong I was. They hadn't just buried Owen's memory. They'd put it up for auction. This wasn't just data theft. It was a full-blown intellectual organ transplant. And Olivia, she was still there, in her ivory tower, probably sipping cucumber lemonade and cleaning up loose ends in Slack. But I wasn't about to lay all this on her in an email. No, I wanted to see her face when it dawned on her that I wasn't just some engineering girl she forgot to add to the distribution list. I was someone with every damn receipt, every change log, every timestamp sufficient for a subpoena. And I'd just scheduled a one-on-one meeting with her. Her calendar invite said, "Review of ethical audit implications." Mine was short and to the point, confess or collapse. She walked into the conference room like nothing had happened. Impeccable navy blazer, hair pulled back in that sharp, razor-edged bun that didn't seem to have changed since 2016. Not a trace of concern. She even smiled. Her face held that strained, practiced smile that people give when they're sure they're the smartest person in the room. I didn't offer her a seat. She didn't wait for an invitation. Settling into the chair, she crossed her legs and looked down at me as if she was about to lecture me on the finer points of bandwidth allocation. "I assume this has to do with the fallout from the patent scandal," she said in a smooth, polished tone, opening her expensive leather-bound notebook. "Let me assure you right away that the company is committed to resolving this internal mess with minimal reputational damage." I silently slid the USB drive across the table. She only blinked once, struggling to maintain her composure. "Funny how things turn out, isn't it?" I said, watching her reaction. "Because this disk contains all the logs of this mess, including your own, your commit ID, your VPN access data to my file archive, and even the Dropbox link to the presentation you so kindly sent to Caldwell Bridge Capital." Olivia didn't flinch, but I noticed her lips part slightly. Victory was near. I continued, "Oh, and I almost forgot about your NDA violation. You left your signature in the document's metadata. Forgot to clean it. A typical rookie mistake." She closed her notebook with deliberate slowness. "I see you've done your homework." I leaned forward, like a predator sensing its prey. "Last year, I buried a person whose memory shouldn't have faded into oblivion. I had plenty of time." She lightly tapped her nail on the USB drive, as if marking a funeral march. "You shouldn't do this. Bad wording. You shouldn't have." A short, icy laugh escaped me. "You think I have a choice?" I reached into my bag and pulled out a prepared envelope. Inside was a printout of Slack correspondence where she and Richard were plotting, deciding who to credit for what, when to file the documents, and how to cut me out of my own project. I made sure to save that too. "This is your copy," I said, enunciating each word clearly. "The other 6 are with the lawyers, HR, the ethics committee, the board of directors, the venture capital firm you fed my work to, and a journalist preparing an article about the company's reshuffling after Harding's departure." For the first time, I saw her hand tremble. And then I delivered the final, crushing blow. "And I also sent a copy of our last correspondence to the lead partner at Caldwell Bridge." You know what he said? I frantically grabbed my phone, opening the message with trembling fingers. "Please notify Miss Audrey Blake that Miss Porter acted on her own initiative. She had no authority to represent any materials as part of our review process. We have ceased all communication with her." The blow landed squarely. It wasn't the dismissal that shocked her, but the realization of how catastrophically she had fallen behind. I could offer you shares," she stammered, her voice an empty shell. "You stole a person's legacy and tried to sell it back to me at a discount," I hissed through my teeth. "There's no value in ashes." She stood up, but there wasn't a trace of her former confidence in her movements. Forgetting the USB drive and the envelope, she left the room as if paralyzed. Legs on cotton pads, her back bent under an invisible weight. I let her go. The real punishment wasn't for me. It awaited her outside the door, an all-consuming silence, full of judging glances and unspoken questions. The internal audit that had started 2 days ago, which she didn't even suspect, was already gaining momentum. Her downfall would be slow, agonizing, devoid of any chance of justification. And I had one last stop. The person I had been avoiding since the beginning of this story, Owen's mother. I owed it to her to tell the truth. And to put an end to it. She lived in a house painted a faded, almost bleached, yellow. Wind chimes swayed on the porch, each with its own story, a discordant chorus greeting the wind. One had Martha's Vineyard written on it, another was decorated with dolphins, and a third was a bizarre construction of a bent hanger and flattened beer caps. Their ringing was like a drunken symphony, tender but out of tune, exactly the kind Owen would have liked. She opened the door before I could knock. "I saw the news," she said quietly, but her voice had a steely resolve. No hint of a smile, no hint of anger, just the same calm, all-seeing observation that Owen always had when someone started talking too loudly at meetings. "Did you really do it?" Her eyes held a silent question. I just nodded, feeling a lump rise in my throat. "May I come in?" She silently led me into the kitchen. The soothing aroma of chamomile tea filled the air, and a mug already sat on the table, as if intended for someone who would never come again. I didn't know where to start, so I simply placed the manila envelope on the table and pushed it towards her. She hesitated, as if gathering her courage. Then, with a trembling hand, she opened the envelope. Inside was a notarized document, the last page of the patent application. I had made the changes to that form the morning after the Olivia debacle. Owen's name was now listed second, officially recognized as a co-author, an integral part of our research. The lawyer insisted I didn't have to do it, that the initial application was flawless. But I didn't do it because of legal formalities, but because of the truth. He once told me, I whispered, that recognition never mattered to him. What if we help even one person find common ground with a machine and feel heard? That would be enough. For the first time, a smile flickered across her face. A faint, sad shadow of a smile. He said that to his father, I remember, after we buried his dog. Said, it doesn't matter if no one remembers who created it, as long as someone is using it. She added, as if sharing her deepest secret, to feel less alone. Silence enveloped us. Then she opened a drawer and took out a small black notebook. Owen always carried it with him, in the inside pocket of his coat. All his drafts, all his late-night notes, they were all there. I didn't dare to read. I didn't think I had the right. I just opened it at random. And there, between pages covered in formulas and midnight thoughts, I saw one line circled 3 times. Protect the domain. She is the one who sees everything. I slammed the book shut, holding back a wave threatening to engulf me from within. I saw it, I whispered, as if casting a spell. And I made sure they saw it too, she replied, nodding briefly, and there was so much strength and confidence in that nod. Then it's over, she said, and there was no trace of grief in her voice, no hint of pain, just a thick, all-consuming silence. Leaving the house, I didn't feel triumphant. No, I felt cleansed, as if after a storm. They wanted to distort the truth, rewrite the past, but I didn't allow it. I made sure that the final chapter of this story was written by my hand.